What is peace control?
Hop in him! Go, 98! Dead
Well, apparently, if you ask Google, it will say, peace control is a term coined by legendary Fortnite caster Artin Essa. Essentially, it means controlling the pieces in proximity to create openings for eliminations. But what exactly does that mean? Well, to answer that, we will have to go all the way back to 2017 when there was a weird game on the rise called Fortnite Battle Royale. The biggest explanation for the game was said to be a mix between Minecraft and PUBG. So you could build forts in it, big whoop. But I don't think people realized at the time truly how revolutionary this simple concept would totally change the landscape of how fighting and shooting games was going to change. There is only one person I could think of who truly understood the implications of building in Fortnite, and that is Dr. Disrespect.
When you're in the fight and you're able to do something on the mouse or keyboard that could alter that fight, that could change that fight based on your ability or skill or knowledge, that's what you want, right? You want this mouse and keyboard to be your Lamborghini right here, man, a stick shift Lamborghini.
It's like he said, your mouse and keyboard becomes like a stick shift Lamborghini. That Lamborghini was about to be pumped full of nitrox, or in gamer terms, G Fuel. During the late months of 2018, game modes such as Creative and Playground got added to the game and people began to get good at the game. Stupid good. So much so that people often label this moment as the beginning of Fortnite's downfall. But that's not what this video is about. Instead, what you should be focusing on in this period of the game is the new and abundant way to fight fights that was quickly taking over the game's meta. And those were build fights. See, in many shooting games, often positioning was the most important skill into winning a fight, and most of the time there is no other position to be in that is better than the high ground. Well, in Fortnite's genius mechanic to allow you to get high ground anytime you want, it quickly became popular to learn all of the fastest building techniques in order to dominate your opponents. Hence, build fighting. Build fighting was common in the meta from Season 6 and still is common today, and let's just say that there is nothing ever seen like it in a shooting game. 4-story towers with every engagement you come across the map, hundreds of innovative techniques being created such as ramp rushing, 90s, and high ground retakes. They were now making their debut. And most importantly, the first instance of peace control ever being used in the meta by a player you may know as TSM Hamlins.
So he has the upper advantage. So what I do is, as soon as he puts his ramp above me, watch this. Watch this, watch this. Okay, he has high ground. Guess what I do? Guess what I do, Jay? What am I gonna do?
Fight!
Bop! Where you going? My high ground now. I fit a pyramid through his shit. Then boom. He doesn't know how to react. It's not something he usually expects.
Now in today's meta, this reaction to this play is hysterical considering the insane skill curve that the average players had today. But at this moment in Fortnite history, TSM Hamlins changed everything with this one simple play and with one simple building piece, the cone. The cone in Fortnite at this time wasn't seen as being very useful. Only the wall, ramp, and floor were used in build fights. Heck, most players didn't even have it binded to their control scheme. So when this clip shows that the cone can potentially be used as an obstacle for movement in a build fight, suddenly everything was about to change. Drastically. People begun using cones in everyday build fighting to now block out the other opponents. This was most obvious form of peace control at the moment, but another trend in Fortnite's skill gap was becoming quickly apparent. Everything and everyone was becoming fast at editing. As more people started to get good at building, their editing skills naturally progressed with it. Soon, single tile edits were beginning to become outdated, as people like Symphony and Nick30 pioneered the mechanic and proved just how far players could potentially push the game at its mechanical limits. But this is nothing compared to what we were about to see next. See, during 2018 through 2019, Epic Games began to officially host Fortnite tournaments, recognizing the ever-increasing skill gap that the game had been developing ever since its launch. They knew that Fortnite was no longer just a game for fun, but now had a legit competitive meta narrative to it. Many competitive players were in these tournaments. Across all of these tournaments, there was one that will prove to gain a considerable amount of hype over the year, a little tournament called the Fortnite World Cup, where all of the literal best players in the world came together for a chance at winning $3 million. Many influential players today have made their mark on this tournament, such as Booga, Clix, Mitro, but most notably for this example, a popular and hyped player called Mongrel. This guy was in the main spotlight for a couple of reasons, being his hyper-aggressive playstyle, his loud and awful boastful personality, but more importantly, for his creation of something he called the Mongrel Classic. Now most of you watching this video have probably already seen it, but for those who don't, it looks something like this.
I just shit on this kid. I love this update! Oh fuck.
As you can see, this is another vital technique in the history of Peace Control, as it marks a very important counter to the current meta at that time. And that meta at the time is something I would like to call the box meta. The box, I feel, in Fortnite is the most overpowered position you could possibly have, as you're protected on all sides by your builds, and every possible angle of attack that could happen is reactable in some shape or form. This means that your opponent is forced to push your box and thus your builds, which can be really dangerous in Fortnite since it requires you to pull out your pickaxe and thus leaves you wide open to shots and counter peeks. Now, the Mongrel Classic doesn't fix these problems entirely, but they do allow for an efficient and truly remarkable way to sort of capture your enemy's box temporarily in order to open up for an elimination. Now that sounds familiar, doesn't it? The implications of this means that players could now approach boxes, perform this move, and get kills quickly in succession because they would be completely caught off guard since it's almost impossible to react to. The Mongrel Classic was so influential that it's still used today in Fortnite's current competitive climate, albeit with more efficiency that allows people to perform it faster and safer than the ones used in World Cup. So now we finally get to Chapter 2 of Fortnite. Long gone are the days of simple building techniques like ramp rushes and 180s, as now players are becoming smarter and can determine when and when not to knock down building structures in build fights. Almost everyone playing the game today knows how to do the basic 90ing technique, and editing has become the fastest that it'll ever be, with some players being able to complete the complex mechanical movements within frames. Everyone was cracked at Fortnite and wanted to become a pro, so that they can earn some sweet earnings and get more PR. As more players purchase PCs in order to have a considerable advantage, as upgrading from console usually allows higher frame rates and lower ping, the skill gap was becoming even larger, as now everyone could do the same techniques to a certain degree. Even through all of this change, there seemed to be an elite skill gap that separates the average from the pros, and that gap in skill was, you guessed it, the amount of Peace Control they have. The main mind game in Fortnite was no longer who could perform the fanciest moves in battle, but now whoever could perform those moves perfectly and innovate on them so that they can outplay their opponents in any situation. Fortnite now has become a game of who is the smarter player. In my opinion, Fortnite's 6 vital skills of success can be broken down into 6 categories: your aim, your mechanics, your game sense, your mindset, your setup, and your Peace Control. That being the most hardest skill to master. Fortnite is a game about risk. It's a game about decision making, but most importantly, it's a game about dedication, where the elite are the ones who practice day and night to perfect their craft. I'll ignore the other skills for now, but Peace Control is one of those skills that single-handedly determines whether or not you're at the pro level or not. As people became faster and faster at editing, the pro players soon discovered that it was not fast edits that were going to secure the kill, but memorization of positioning and tight building placement that determines the winner. In other words, Peace Control requires you to have building and editing skills that Fortnite set up from the very beginning, with all the other skills that can somewhat be learned from the previous shooting games before Fortnite. Peace Control is a skill that you can only learn in Fortnite since it's so fundamental to the game's core elements. It is the meta to beat the meta, or in other words, Peace Control is counter Fortnite. in the sense that the main objective is to prevent your opponent from building, thus creating openings for attack. Piece control stops players from building, but unlike other things in the game that stop people from building, like knocking down structures, spraying, or even having high ping, piece control takes an extreme understanding of the game's fundamentals to perform, since essentially you have to know how the entire building mechanic works before you can piece control in Fortnite. Before you can know how piece control works, you have to know how Fortnite works. So there it is, that is what piece control is. If I were to give a summary, it would be this. Piece control is the highest form of meta-narrative combat in Fortnite. It requires an intense understanding of the game's building and editing mechanics that were prevalent from the start, featured in the game. It is the ultimate culmination of what fighting in Fortnite has finally evolved into. It is the hardest skill to learn, and the hardest skill to master. Piece control is controlling Fortnite's building system, or in more pretentious terms, mastering the Fortnite building mechanic.